All right, welcome to today's explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here with us because today we are going on a real journey to uncover the hidden foundations of human behavior. Have you ever wondered why we struggle so much with changing our daily actions? Like why it feels like we're fighting a losing battle against our own minds when we just want to start a new routine or, kick a bad one to the curb? Well, today we're going to literally peel back the layers and look at the deep, totally invisible architecture driving what we do every single day. By the end of this explainer, I promise you're going to see your daily choices in a completely new light. So let's jump right in. So, why exactly is avoiding sugar pure mental torture? We have all been there, right? You decide, okay, I'm going to cut back on sweets, but then just avoiding the sugary foods sitting right in front of you quickly becomes, well, agonizing. And here is the absolutely fascinating reason why. Every single time you see sugar and you don't already have an established, rock solid habit in place to handle that specific situation, it costs you immense, exhausting decision making energy. You literally have to actively debate with yourself. Should I eat it? Shouldn't I? Ugh, maybe just one bite. That mental back and forth completely drains your willpower, making the whole process feel like actual torture. Okay, let's dive right into this by figuring out what a habit actually is at its core. Basically, it's an involuntary brain reflex. We develop these repetitive patterns when we encounter the exact same experiences over and over again. But you gotta ask, why does our brain even do this? Well, it's a brilliant survival mechanism. The brain creates these reflexes purely to save your physical and mental energy for other much more demanding tasks. See, when a behavior becomes a habit, we just do it. We don't put any effort into deciding whether to do it or not. The brain essentially slips the switch to autopilot just to conserve that precious energy. And this brings us to a really crucial comparison in how we actually approach changing our lives. When we try to force a behavior change without changing our underlying habits, we're engaging in what we call open-ended change. Now, on one hand, this is totally exhausting. It requires constant evaluation, leading directly to that mental torture and high energy drain we just talked about with the sugar. But on the flip side, if we want to change our habits for good, what we actually need is closed-ended change. This is the sweet spot where the choice is already made for you. It's crystal clear, it requires absolutely zero energy to be spent, and it honestly just feels effortless. To really wrap our heads around this closed-ended, effortless kind of change, let's look at a brilliant example. Think about this. If you are a vegetarian, then you don't eat meat. Period. That's it. Vegetarian is your identity. This is the ultimate if-then framework. If you're a vegetarian, or say a devoutly religious person who doesn't eat a specific food, you spend literally zero energy deciding what to eat in those situations. You don't stand there sweating in front of a menu evaluating, can I eat this, should I? You just don't do it. You don't invest any time or energy agonizing over a decision because the choice is just a natural, automatic byproduct of your deeply held identity. The habit is inextricably linked to who you fundamentally are. Now, what's truly fascinating here is how this reveals the deep, hidden psychological architecture of our minds. We're really peeling back the layers now, going from the surface all the way down to the root. Because as we know, our habits don't just magically appear out of thin air. First, we have our experiences. Then, our mind naturally creates a story for every single experience we have. Those stories then go on to create our beliefs. Our beliefs dictate our values. Our values, in turn, create our identity. And finally, that identity produces our habits. It's this massive direct chain reaction. So if you want to change the habit at step 6, you absolutely have to trace it all the way back up the chain. So where exactly does this massive chain reaction even begin? Well, subconsciously, we build our foundations and thinking patterns, our core stories, during our childhood. Basically, the vast majority of our subconscious beliefs are locked in during our early formative years, specifically from ages 0 to 7. Think about that. We start absorbing experiences right from birth, and these early experiences formulate our entire mindset long before we even become conscious, critical thinkers. Those early years essentially act as the absolute bedrock for the rest of that entire identity architecture we just explored. Okay, so let's actually walk through exactly how we can build a new, rock-solid, healthy identity from scratch using this very architecture. It all kicks off with step 1, the belief. If you want to effortlessly avoid sugar, what's the core belief you need? Well, you have to fundamentally believe deep down that sugary and junk foods are unhealthy and actually cause you long-term harm. And even broader than that, it requires the foundational belief that your physical and mental health are the absolute keys to a high-quality life. Without this initial foundational belief acting as your anchor, the rest of the structure simply cannot stand. Now, once you've got that core belief firmly in place, it naturally transitions right into step 2, the value. See, our beliefs ultimately create what we choose to value or not value in our lives. Think of your values as your inner compass. They're telling you which direction to head and what kind of choices to make on a daily basis. So, building on that belief we just established, the value becomes super clear. We deeply value our health and wellness. We value a healthy lifestyle, and we highly value good habits. We start placing a premium on these things, actively prioritizing them way above any kind of temporary, sugary satisfaction. And here, my friends, is where the real magic happens. Step 3, the identity. Because we now value a healthy and fit lifestyle, we naturally begin to identify ourselves as a healthy and strong person. And this is absolutely crucial. What we identify with directly creates our self-image. It builds this mental picture of a fit, strong, and healthy personality. And remember, your self-image determines what you believe you are capable of actually doing and what you believe you deserve in life. When your identity finally shifts to "I am a healthy person," well, passing on the junk food becomes just as effortless as the vegetarian passing on meat. It's just who you are now. And this brilliantly illustrates the darker side of this whole architecture, too. The slippery slope we slide right down when we lack those healthy core values. If we don't genuinely believe junk food is harmful, we won't value our health, and therefore we definitely won't identify as a healthy person. And what does that do? It creates a mental self-image of a mediocre person with a really casual attitude towards life. And how do we protect that mediocre self-image when things get hard? We fall right back on familiar excuses. We tell ourselves things like, it's not worth it, or what's the use? We trick ourselves into thinking, it may not bring a huge difference anyway. Or we falsely claim, I'm perfectly happy with my current sedentary lifestyle. Honestly, these excuses are just defense mechanisms for an identity that's lacking. And the tragic thing is, those excuses eventually trap us in what is known as the false story. We basically create this completely false narrative just to give ourselves justifications and excuses for not having the discipline to lead a healthy life. But here is the truly dangerous part. We then start actually living out this self-deprecating story that we formulated in our own heads. We subconsciously begin to believe that we just don't deserve to be fit or strong or healthy. We validate our own excuses, wrapping them up nicely in false logic, and we just submit to those limiting thoughts. We basically convince ourselves that it's perfectly fine to stay exactly how we are, ultimately stunting our own incredible potential. Which brings us to a final and honestly, perhaps the most important thought of this entire explainer. I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative question. What story are you subconsciously submitting to today? Really take a moment to reflect on your own invisible architecture. Look at the daily habits you struggle with the most and trace them backwards. Are they rooted in a self-deprecating story? Are they tied to some limiting beliefs that were formed years and years ago? Because remember, true, lasting change isn't about exhausting yourself with open-ended willpower. It's about changing the story, upgrading your core beliefs, and stepping fully into an identity where your desired habits are simply a reflection of who you truly are. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this empowers you to go out and rebuild your own identity architecture.